Hello, this is That Shy Guy Matt, and today we're watching a short video called Why Do the British Look Down on Americans? This is from the channel Nathaniel Drew. So go check him out on YouTube, give him a thumbs up. But yeah, I thought this would be interesting because I'm born American, raised American. Yeah, some countries do look down on us. Especially the British, a lot of times. I think it could be a combination of issues, like jealousy, or maybe, jealousy that we fought them and we won our independence and we become this more of a superpower and they're not. Some of it could be because foreign news tends to only talk about the negative stuff that happens in America, so it makes us look like this crappy country. And for some people, they may just be kind of snobby about it and think their country's the best, period. And to be fair, Americans do the same thing. I meet many Americans who think America is the best, hands down, with no issues. America has issues. This has nothing to do with like religion or politics. I'm just mean in general. America's not perfect. Now, would I ever leave this country? No. I'd be hard pressed. I'll go visit another country for sure. Like I want to go visit Italy. But I don't think I could move to another country. I have a lot of freedoms in this country that I definitely do not take for granted. But yeah, I'm curious to see what the British have to say about this from their own lips. So yeah, let us just watch this video.
I'm in London to get to the bottom of a very important question.
For as long as I can remember, I have had the sense that the British look down on Americans. This is a generalization, and therefore doesn't apply to everyone, but it's a strong enough trend that I felt I needed to investigate this further. Here's a quote from Prince Harry's memoir, Spare, that perfectly captures the feeling that I have about this. With some, the anti-American sentiment ran very hot. I was reminded of my childhood, when people warned me all the time about Americans. Too loud, too rich, too happy, too confident, too direct, too honest.
I'm very curious what people are going to have to say about this.
Okay, so he's an American in Britain. Okay.
I have a feeling I'm onto something, okay? So, having said that, let's start talking to some people.
Excuse me, shooting a video for YouTube. Could I ask you guys a question? It'll be really brief. You hate it? Okay, that's okay.
I'm sorry.
Not that easy today, huh?
No, it's not. I was wondering if I could just get a moment.
I've got too much time.
We're off to a very slow start. That's okay. Let's just change up the spot because I'm feeling like there's enough projections in that 100-meter radius.
I always feel really terrible that everyone's first attitude is, oh, you're from America, are you? Oh, okay. But you always feel a bit bad about that.
Okay, I will say, what he just said, that, a lot of people say, oh, you're from America? Yeah. Way too many Americans, when they go to another country, I don't want to do the stereotype of they're loud and obnoxious and kind of do whatever they want, but it's becoming much bigger of a trend, especially by younger people, and it's kind of, that does not make America look good. Whenever you go to another country, you need to research online their rules, their etiquette, their customs, even their laws, so you know what you should and shouldn't do. Even subjects you should or shouldn't talk about. Like when you come to America from another country, it's probably best not to bring up religion or politics. Those, no. Some Americans are going to shut you down, some are going to yell about it. Don't bring those up. But yeah, I could see why a lot of people, when they see an American in their country, they think, uh-oh, here comes trouble. And again, not all Americans do that when they go overseas, but it's more and more are, and it's very off-putting to a foreigner, and it makes them think less of America. So yeah, that could be one reason why they look down on Americans.
Entirely sure why we still do that, but
Yeah. How do you feel perceived as Americans by the British here in London?
A big, stupid, bellowing oaf. Really? Yeah, genuinely. I always feel like I have to apologize for being American. It's like, I know my accent's the worst thing you'll hear today, but can I just order a coffee?
My experience, I feel like, has been a little bit different. I think that might be somewhat informed by the fact that I'm a student here.
Okay.
At first, there was a bit of a learning curve. Like, when I would speak loudly on the tube, I would kind of get looks, and people would tell me, like, you're being American, can you maybe not?
There's definitely sort of a sense that there is a lot of difficult things going on
Yeah.
in America, and that America potentially could be quite a difficult place to live, especially if you're of colour or from the Middle East.
I have to admit, the inspiration to make this video came when
That's an interesting one. Again, this is sort of the problem with foreign media, is they tend to only ever talk about the negative things that happen here. I have friends from all around the world, and I've had them say, one of them is like, what is he? Is he Nigerian? Well, his family's from Nigeria, but he lives in Britain currently, and he's terrified to come to America because he thinks he's going to be shot by cops, or people are going to call him racist words, especially because he has an accent. And it's like, racism and other issues exist in America. They exist in every country. But to a lot of foreigners, they think America is just like this fully racist country. Especially when you get into politics, where one side says this side's racist and the other side will says this side's yada yada yada. If you're a person of color and you come here, odds are you're going to be fine. I mean, America is a diverse mixing pot of people. Yeah, white people make up a good like the majority of the percentage of the population, but it's not like every person on the street's going to be calling you names or whatever. When my wife came here from the Philippines, I think she's been here 12 years now, 11 years now. I'd say 12 years. And the whole time she's been here, I think she's had maybe like 6 comments made to her. 3 of them were at workplaces where she was, where people got mad about her accent. One or two were at a local kind of club where admittedly these were vets who were like from Vietnam and that kind of era, so they weren't really for Asian people. So, you know, I'm not excusing their behavior, but so there is racist here. But yeah, the media really makes it look worse. The foreign media makes it look like America's just this country full of hateful people on every side, and it's not. It's just not. We work together, we play together, we eat together, we talk together. You'll find friends, a group of friends where some of them are Republicans, some are Democrats, some are Christians, some are atheists, some are black, some are white. For the most part, we all get along just fine. I'm not saying it's perfect again, but again, the media plays such a big role. Even our own media has a problem with only sharing negative news, which just makes everyone mad at each other. So I blame the media for most of that stuff.
when I moved to Europe. As I've explored in previous videos on this channel, many Europeans have mixed to negative views of Americans as dumb and uncultured. But to my surprise, the same goes for the British. I've come to realize that the only people that see the British as intelligent and sophisticated are the Americans. Many Europeans, like the Portuguese or the Spanish, see a very different reality. The British that go off on holiday to get extremely drunk and break things. The British that are isolationist with Brexit. The British that don't learn foreign languages, that stick to their native tongue. Wait a second, I thought to myself.
That's
what
us.
Americans do. Other people do this as well?
How dare they copy us?
I kid, of course. Still, it does feel like the Brits act like the Americans of Europe, but I am certain that is not something that they'd like to hear said about them. I mean, no offense. I am.
That is a good point. So, think about it. A lot of British always made fun of the fact that we had slavery for so long, and we you know, like we took over Native American lands, but you're British. Do you know how many countries Britain took over or killed people in or assimilated their own version of slavery? I think maybe that's why another reason Brits may look down on us, because we're a younger country that did that, and they think they've gone past that. So like, well, you did it, you still did it in a relatively sooner time than we did. We did it way in the past. Well, that doesn't excuse it. Both countries have done that. So if you look down at us for it, you have to remember you did it too. And we're a young country. Well, we're over 200 years old now, but we're growing. We got past slavery. Yeah, we've done some unfortunate things like with the Native Americans, but yeah. So yeah, I could see, yeah, he's making very good points here. That's why, yeah, sometimes British people do come off as uppity, like they're more superior. and I think they forget their own roots. So I don't generally think of that myself. Most British people I've met are very friendly. We have some cultural differences, but they're usually pretty minor.
I'm American after all. Does that not prove my point though? No one wants to stoop to the level of Americans. I felt I had to get my answers directly from the source.
My perception is that the UK is 1 foot in Europe, 1 foot like in the Americas. It feels like it should be in the middle of the Atlantic. Do you agree with that?
I think that's a pretty conclusive idea. Yeah, I think that's definitely true because a lot of people wouldn't even class England as being in Europe. You know, even in England, when you talk about going to Europe, no one ever thinks you mean Doncaster. They always think you mean Germany. You do get some perception that everyone's some sort of like a Valley girl accent or something like that, and I think that annoys people quite a lot. But then again, it's the same way that English people are often perceived as all sort of being from London. The American dream, making yourself better and being seen to be self-improving, and it's a lot about earning money and being the best you can and going to the gym and all these kind of things.
Do you think that's, are you saying it's positive or negative?
I think it's a positive thing for Americans, but I think the way it's perceived is often everyone goes, oh, get out of my face, you know, because they probably, no one likes to enjoy someone else's success, at least in England anyway. I think in America.
Okay, fair. Yeah, we're a very successful country that has turned into a superpower. So that is definitely, yeah, I could see other countries like the Brits would probably be annoyed by that because we think we're superior. Even though most of us don't really think we're superior, we definitely think we have some great qualities in our country. But yeah, that is a good point.
It's probably very different. Oh, great, you got a promotion. Fucking bastards, you know.
The identity of being American is like such a thing.
Right.
That I don't think other places have that as much.
I don't think people are necessarily dumb, and I don't think it's a question of being dumb. I think it's just that there's this idea of like, yeah, being the best. To think that like people in America, depending on where you're born, you can have access to care or not, it's frightening. And I don't know how you can speak about being the best when you can't even make sure that everybody's like taken care of. Are you treating everyone the same way in America? No, not everyone is treated the same way, just like not everyone is treated the same way in Europe.
She definitely has some issues with America. Not everybody has access to care. It's a complicated bag. You could still get care. If you can't afford it, you could get like Medicaid. If you're a senior, you're on Medicare, albeit expensive. And I know healthcare here is expensive. And so a lot of times when people talk about their healthcare is better in other countries because like maybe it's free, well, first off, it's not really free. You have monies that go towards it, that come from you anyways. And second, for every case I hear of somebody praising a foreign country's free medical stuff, I also hear an equal amount of people saying they hate it because when you have major health issues, sometimes there could be longer waits. Or, you know, like one guy, I forgot what he had, some kind of like thyroid cancer, and he had to wait like a year and a half to see a doctor, and getting a treatment was complicated. So there's definitely pros and cons to our medical care systems. But that lady was just kind of perceiving it like, yeah, you could tell she definitely has something against America. And then what else did she say? Yeah, she's definitely looking for like, it'd be easier if we just both mutually agree neither of us is really the best. For every pro, there's a con for our country. And as for people being mistreated, you could definitely see the way she worded it though. She said they're mistreated in America just like they are in Europe. But she didn't say Britain. But I know there are people mistreated in Britain too. So, like I said, it exists everywhere, but you could see she's trying to by playing it off like Britain doesn't have its own fair of issues with people being mistreated. Now, do I see a lot of news stories coming out of Britain of people being mistreated? Not really as many as I see in America, but then again, I live here, so our news is always gonna show negative stuff, so I don't know what the news exactly is like in Britain when it comes to their local stories. I know there was a lot of stories for a while there of British people having problems with like immigrants who are Muslim. So see, that's, you know, we all have that issue of our countries aren't always accepting of other people or whatever, regardless of your views on the subject. Just saying.
Having been to America a lot, they often ask, obviously as a joke, but just like, do you know the royal family or anything like that?
So do you feel that generally, the big generalization, there's mockery towards the Americans and Americans towards the British is more like cute. We think you're cute.
Yeah, I would say that, yeah.
How do you feel about Americans thinking you're cute?
Well, it can be taken as a compliment, obviously, but if they think that we're, like, as a country, not really a force to be reckoned with, then just because we do all these, like, things that date back to long before the US was established, it's not really relevant that they can mock us for that.
Is it condescending, would you say?
A little bit.
Or ignorant?
More ignorant. It doesn't, like, hurt me.
How do you feel America?
Not sure what he's talking about there. Forced to be reckoned with, like, militarily? You're not a force to be reckoned with. Nothing personal, you're just not. But do they mean just, like, in general? I mean, it's a small island of countries there. And I've never really heard anybody mock the British, per se. I mean, they're like stereotypes, of course, but I'm not sure what he's getting at. Let me play that back. Yeah. What do you think of Americans thinking you're cute? I don't know. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. I've never really thought that about the British. I mean, I've never really thought them as lesser to any extent. I mean, there are definitely some countries that I think less of, like let's say China. I'm not a big fan of China, how it treats its people. But yeah, I don't know.
How do you feel Americans perceive the British, first of all?
They kind of look down on us.
You feel that?
I feel like Americans think like they're on top of everything, and there's always competition between the two.
So do you feel like the British have a chip on their shoulder a little bit because of that?
Yeah, a lot.
What do you think the British are better at than Americans?
Being polite, really.
More polite?
Yeah. More talkative, more helpful.
More helpful? The British are more helpful?
Yeah, than Americans. But Americans are nice, they're funny, got good music.
I don't know, is that true? I always hear British people tell me over there they don't really talk a lot with each other. Like, if you run across somebody in America, some stranger, you could probably strike up a conversation more or less. But when in Britain, I've been told it's harder to strike up a conversation with somebody. Like, if you get to know them, they'll become talkative, but they're not quite as opening. Not that they're cold, but it's just different. Yeah, he also said the British are more polite and helpful. I don't know if he's ever been to America. And again, this is all based on how I perceive America from where I live. I live in Ohio, in the Great Lakes region. I find Americans to be helpful. Somebody could hold a door for you, or like if I'm at Aldi's, if you don't know what Aldi's is, it's like a store. They have these shopping carts, you gotta put a quarter in to unlock the cart from another so you could use it. Don't ask why, just that's how it is. Sometimes when you're walking up to a cart, somebody may just give you the cart and not even request the quarter back. Americans can be helpful. We gather around, we help each other. And as for polite, it's a mixed bag because there's always going to be people who aren't polite. There are definitely rude Americans. People I know that live in Britain, I've heard them say they don't think of themselves as necessarily as polite because they come off as more, like personal, like, I don't want to say rude. I don't know. I haven't been to Britain. I don't know if this guy's been to America, but we're definitely polite and helpful and talkative. That's my opinion. I could be wrong, though.
Talkative, more helpful.
More helpful. The British are more helpful.
Yeah, than Americans. But Americans are nice. They're funny. Got good music.
Got good music. Okay. Well, the British have good music too, man.
Americans are taking over the music scene.
But I mean, come on. There's a lot of great British music.
So here's the thing that I think is going on here. We are not the same, the Brits and the Americans, but we sure have a lot of similarities. Compare us to the Japanese, or to Native Americans, or to Ethiopians, and the differences between Americans and the British seems relatively small. We're like blood siblings in the village that is the globe.
So yeah, we're cousins.
Here's
That's what I always say.
Started to make me think of. There's a concept in psychoanalysis. I'm going to read you the definition, but it's called the narcissism of small differences. This comes from Freud. The narcissism of small differences is the idea that the more a relationship or community shares commonalities, the more likely the people in it are to engage in interpersonal feuds and mutual ridicule because of hypersensitivity to minor differences perceived in each other.
That would make sense. Yeah, I can't really... in this video I'm bringing up things, but outside of this, I never really nitpick anything in Britain. Sometimes maybe the healthcare system, the things that I've heard, but other than that... But I could see this narcissism of small differences. Yeah, I could see how people do that. Me, I've always said America and Britain were cousins, basically. We were Britain, part of it, and we broke off and became our own country, so we're cousins. I don't see a lot of differences. I don't see a lot of major differences. Maybe with like policies and stuff, there's differences, of course. But we're closer to each other than we are any other country, I'd say.
We see this all over the world, between the Argentinians and the Chileans, for example, between the French and the Belgians. And indeed, I think this is what is happening between the Brits and the Americans. But at the end of the day, I feel like we make the little things that make us different much bigger than they really are.
The way that we speak and the words that we use.
Yeah.
And again, we were talking about this, weren't we?
Yeah.
About
we were
certain
talking
words.
about things like autumn versus fall. And it's like that's often something that people like bring up. And for some, well, it's because it's a simpler word, and it's like, fall, American.
You guys don't say
classic.
fall?
No, we don't say fall. We
Oh,
say
interesting.
autumn.
Okay.
So this is autumn, not fall.
But you can say autumn as well.
Personally, when I come to the UK, I have the impression that I've come halfway across the Atlantic. I'm not just off the coast of continental Europe. And by that I mean, culturally, it feels so much more similar to the life that I had in the US. The convenience
that's
of
how
life,
I would look at
the
it.
speed, the capitalism, the language.
Everyone speaks English. Everyone's like got the same sort of core values. I'm not necessarily a big Christian person at all, but we all come from this like Christian-based countries. America and Australia are English. There's some things that happen in history, but at the end of the day, we're kind of all the same group of people in that regard.
Culturally influenced.
Culturally influenced by
I like
the same
that.
group. So I personally don't see many differences at all.
I mean, I've got wonderful American friends who I adore. So that question for me is a difficult one because I think they're great, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
I think the differences in the way our language is, in the way we use different words, that's where there's a difference.
So
But
pretty minor.
Yeah.
Do you think that sometimes some of the British media or the portion of the British population that looks down on Americans, is it a way to deflect some of the issues that exist here? And could that be said of all societies?
Yeah, you can say that of all societies,
Yeah.
but you can also say that about the media. They're always distracting, aren't they, from topics, whatever it is.
America's seen as very alpha male. If you think about it in terms of masculine and feminine, there's an alpha maleness to Americans. And maybe it's just the way they speak, the accent, but you don't really have that sense of Britain. I think there's a stereotype of the repressed male, that soft-spoken.
Considering we're like right on the edge of Europe, we have more in common with America in many ways than we do with the rest of Europe, which in theory is where we should be more aligned. And I think it's sort of something that can feel sort of slightly odd about that, you know, like with the whole Brexit thing, breaking away more from where we're most closely connected to and sort of being in a situation where, you know, we're going to end up with chlorinated chicken instead.
There's this tendency to think of Americans as just, they're simplistic, really.
Are you like annoyed by the Americans here?
That is interesting. That guy mentioned the alpha male thing. In British men are more soft-spoken. I had never really thought about that before, but yeah, there's a few British people I watch, and even my British friends. A lot of them are more soft-spoken. I mean, I've never even thought about it before. It doesn't even matter to me, but that's an interesting concept.
Sometimes.
I wouldn't say.
Depends how they are.
Now, the interesting thing is, I love to drag the US through the mud and criticize it for all the things that I think it deserves criticism for, but the second the Brits start criticizing me or the US, you have nothing to say. Kind of like, I can criticize where I grew up, but you aren't allowed to. And the British, in my opinion, are doing their version of the same thing, criticizing themselves to no end, but no one wants an outside opinion. Maybe
That is also fair. Yeah, no one really likes to be criticized, especially like where they live. Again, I don't really ever criticize Britain. And in this video, I'm mainly just bringing up talking points because that's what the subject is. But like I said, I'm critical of both countries, my country and their country, because flaws exist in every country. I don't care where you live.
Maybe we all do this. I think we all do this. It's like pointing at someone else's flooding house when your own house is on fire.
So I lived in America for 6 years. I lived in California, Alabama, and Oklahoma for 3 years. Everyone hears my accent and is like, oh, where in America are you from? I'm like, bro, I'm actually from Australia, but then they give me their little opinions on American stuff. So
When I guess he's Australian.
Play defense a couple times since I've been out here. I'm so serious. I'm so serious. They talk about guns or they talk about this, but they don't have like a very good understanding, not just English people, just people around the world, even in Australia, of the history of America and why those things became what they were. People trying to throw rocks and then hide their hands.
Yeah.
They don't want the blame to be on them, so it's easy to put it on the big superpower that is on everyone's TV.
My perception.
Another valid point. Yeah. Being the superpower we are, everyone knows of us, and we're always talked about. Which also means we're also going to get a lot of criticism, which also means the media plays a big role in the problem with that role. But yeah, being the center of attention isn't always great in some ways.
I don't consider Americans necessarily lesser in terms of like lifestyle, culture per se. I just think it's a bit more apparent than it is in the UK, but the UK is just as problematic.
There's always sort of a sense in the past that like America was sort of, 2 decades ahead of what was happening in this country. There is a sense that we're getting closer in a time frame.
I would say younger generations tend to be a bit more, and the only word I can think of it is shameful of the heritage. I think it's a lot of things from like colonialization and things like that. There tends to be a lot more shame around it.
We're a small island, right? So
Okay, that's very valid. American or British, a lot of younger people. I call myself a Zennial. I'm technically a millennial by like a few months. I've always more identified with Gen X. That's why I go with the Zennial term. Though, really, I don't even say that much because I don't really care about generational stuff. But the younger millennials and Gen Z definitely have a very superior, mentality and moral view of the world. And so they aren't, Americans and British, neither one of them ever seem proud of their country because of the past. And it's really kind of silly because the past was the past. We learn lessons from it. But you could be proud of who you are now and how this country is now. Again, regardless of politics. Yeah, but to be fair, in 100 years, the Gen Z's grandchildren will also think the same way. And in 200 years, their great-great-grandchildren will think the same way. Younger people always, when you're in your teens, up until you're 25 or 30, you have this very morality superiority complex because you think you're young and you think you know everything and you think your age is the best and everything your group does is the best and it's more modern, and it is more modern, so to speak, but it's a common thing. Generation after generation, it's gone on forever. But yeah, I've definitely noticed that the younger Brits and younger Americans aren't patriotic at all for their country anymore. Instead, they criticize their own country and they criticize other countries, and it's kind of sad, really.
So we've got a small island mentality, but because we've got a small island mentality, we've got to overcome it by kind of that impression that we're the best. And I think that's changing, though. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a total reflection of society now, but I think historically it has been, of course. Let's flip the question. How are Americans perceiving the British?
My answer to that is there is a power dynamic going on, and for better or for worse, the U.S. is much more of a world superpower right now. So I don't think that the U.S. feels threatened necessarily, competitive with Great Britain. Because of that, I think there's kind of they're cute, you know what I mean? They're Harry Potter and James Bond.
I see what they meant by cute now. And the whole lesser thing. Okay, I can admit, yeah, when I think of Britain, I don't think of them as lesser, but I definitely think of them as, they just exist. Because I am from a country that's a superpower, so yeah, it doesn't mean I look down on them, but yeah, I never thought about it that way. When I think of other countries like us, I think of other superpowers, like Russia or China. I don't really consider Britain in that mix. They're like a tier below of just regular powered countries, and it doesn't mean a bad thing, but that's a very good point. But I would never tell someone who's British, I think lesser of your country, or I just don't really think about you whatever. Definitely not. We're very much connected. We're allies. We're cousins. But that's interesting. I never really thought about that before, about the whole superpower aspect. And not that we kind of forget Brits are there, but they just exist. And we don't really think about it too much unless something's on the news, like the Queen died, or like when Princess Diana died, you know, that was all over our news. So
and sophisticated and, you know,
Use words like autumn.
exactly. But I also think that there's also a major degree of ignorance. Like the U.S. is so self-involved. We're not even paying attention to what's going on elsewhere in the world. So there's not even enough to form an opinion.
Yeah.
I'll disagree with him on that. I know he's American, but this is tough because I don't really want to bring up politics at all. Because no matter what I say, someone's going to be angry. And I really don't want that with this community that I'm trying to build up here. But America is very involved in a lot of things. Israel, Palestine, Russia, Ukraine. We have bases in so many other countries. We have pacts with other countries. We send aid to other countries. We share technology with other countries. We sell to other countries. So I think we're very much involved. Now, if he means like the normal American, like non-politician, they're sort of only, you know, the average American's only involved with themselves, and they don't really think about outside of their own little bubble in their country. Okay, I could kind of understand that. I've always been kind of well-informed and multicultural. That's just how I was raised. But yeah, a lot of people I met, they can't really tell you much of anything outside the USA. Like, if you tell them about Britain, what they know about it, they'll be like, royal family, Big Ben, red double-decker buses, Doctor Who, like he said, Harry Potter, James Bond. So yeah, that's valid. But yeah, the average person does not think about other countries as much, even though they may see on the news that we're involved in some war or we're involved in some aid thing, whatever. But
you know, now this video was definitely supposed to be in good fun. I harbor no ill will towards the British. I find our rivalries as human beings across cultures, across nations, to be comical and interesting. It's like an insight into human psychology. And despite all of the, you know, criticizing going on here, I'd like to end on a positive note. I'd like to express my appreciation for a few things that I think the British do better than Americans. Your healthcare system, for one. Also, the Premier League. They say football was invented in England, and if that is true, as someone with Argentinian background, I can only thank you. I also have to thank you for your incredible music. What a contribution to our collective heritage. It is a foreign idea to me to have a royal family, but I respect the commitment to tradition.
But I did move here the week that the Queen died, so it was really interesting to see. I think my first impression of like the British as a public was that of like mourning for their queen, you know, the 14-hour-long line to go see her lying in state. So I think it was a little bit of a shock. This might sound silly, but how procedural the British can be. I noticed that tends to be, like every British person I've met, tends to be very procedural, as opposed to Americans, I think, are a little...
Again, a lot of younger British people I watch in British friends I know, the younger Brits definitely did not care about the Queen's death. A lot of them don't even like the idea of the royal family even just being a thing anymore and say it's outdated. So, just like here in America, the younger generations have certain views about certain things too, compared to the older generations. As for the procedural thing, again, I don't live in Britain. I can only go by what my friends have told me from there. But they do seem to be more or less procedural or scheduled, or as sometimes you say, scheduled? I heard somebody say that once. Us Americans, we're more, while everything's fast-paced, we're more open and free-spirited, and on the whim we'll kind of just do something sporadically. So
a little bit more, like, dare I say, free-spirited or individualistic. So
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's not to say that one is better than the other.
And as a final note, we are obviously a world of individuals, and so stereotypes never fully work. Still, I find it's so fascinating to explore the stereotypes and cliches that we have for one another. Not always, but often there is some sort of basis of truth there,
Yeah.
or else they wouldn't spread and persist as they do. Anyway, having said all of that, I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please consider liking it, which tells the algorithms to share this with more people. I thought it was fun, and it's a format I'd love to continue exploring. And also consider subscribing so that you can see more of the material that I make. With that, I hope to see you soon.
Okay, you heard him. Like, comment, subscribe to me. Like, comment, subscribe to him. That was a very cool video. Yeah, the thing about stereotypes, I've always said, as much as everyone hates stereotypes, there's always a very small hint of truth behind that stereotype, or it wouldn't exist, no matter how uncomfortable it is. Like when people always mock the British for having bad teeth. Well, they used to, and it's because, for the most part, they did at a time in the past. Just like there's a stereotype that Americans are dumb and like rednecks, and some are. I mean, there's always a little bit of truth to every stereotype. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe. Lets me know you want to see more of this kind of content. Trying to think of some more ideas for more videos to watch like this, aside from just TV and movie stuff. And with that said, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.